What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Morning Cup of Hockey presented by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. So use our code DAILY365. It's going to be a very difficult episode to get through for Colby and I. Obviously, everyone right now knows everything that's happened over the weekend with the Gaudreau family as we mourn the loss of Johnny and Matthew. Colby, I know you knew the Gaudreau brothers personally, so I'm sure it's been a little bit more difficult on your end. And I kind of just want to give you the floor because I didn't know either of them personally. So it's been a little bit tougher for me to talk about.
Well, look, this is the first time we're recording, obviously since the really, really tragic news has rocked not just the hockey world, but the sports world, the Philadelphia community, the South Jersey community, Columbus, Calgary. I mean, you name it.
It's global. It's been global.
It's been, it's news that has shook a lot of people. And, we're recording this episode on Tuesday, the 3rd. We'll be releasing it on the 4th. And look, we felt that we needed to start this episode and we need to address it. And there's been a lot of information out there. People are pretty well aware of what happened. For me, Johnny, I knew Johnny and Maddie well. I'm not going to sit here and say we were best friends because I think that would be an overstatement. But, not a lot of guys in our area that are pros, right? And high-end hockey guys in the Philly, South Jersey area. There are some, so we all generally know each other and skate and work out together and whatnot. And I remember meeting Johnny and Maddie right before Johnny was about to head off to the USHL. It was probably like 09, 10. He was a pretty young kid at the time. I had just signed my first pro contract, but we all worked out and skated together, and I'd heard all these things about him and Tony D'Angelo. I think was about the same age as Johnny. So when I was 17 or 18 years old, we started hearing about Johnny and Tony D, who were like 13-year-old kids at the time, and then Maddie was a couple years younger. So look, I think everybody knows Johnny, the hockey player, and is really familiar with what he did on the ice. And look, all I can tell you is that the thing that I most respected and appreciated about, both of them, is that, they were kids that never changed with success. Obviously Maddie never became a star like Johnny. He was a decent player. He played Division I. He had a decent career. Now he was coaching in the North American League, which is actually where I crossed paths with Maddie a bunch of times last year when they played the Titans and got to catch up with them. And I know he was really excited, and his wife was pregnant and all that stuff. So that's just absolutely gut wrenching and heartbreaking. But, when it comes to Johnny, you have a kid who became a superstar. I mean, one of the faces of the National Hockey League, and it never changed him. He never, ever became arrogant. He never became cocky. I remember when he signed his first big contract with Calgary, we were all working out. Our different groups were at Endeavor Fitness where we all trained, and no big deal to him, it wasn't like, let's go out and celebrate. It was just like business as usual. I'm like, dude, you just made $50 million or whatever. And you just never would have known it because he was such a humble guy. And I think that that's a testament to his parents, to both of their parents, obviously, what upstanding people that they were in the community. So a horrible, horrible tragedy, that is something we're going to think about and we're going to talk about all season beyond. The circumstances around it, just heartbreaking. But, everybody who came into contact with both brothers knew they were good human beings. But above all else, they were good members of the community. They treated people well. They took care of people. Mr. Gaudreau, Guy, as people knew, taught a lot of the kids in South Jersey how to play hockey. So really, really tragic news. I hope people think twice about drinking and getting behind the wheel of their car. It's unnecessary to do in today's society with Uber and everything. So horrible, horrible stuff. Something we wanted to address. We hate to put a damper on the beginning of the episode, an episode that we're really excited about, because we have Sam Rosen joining us, the Hall of Famer, joining us in this episode. And I can't wait to talk to Sam. I know you especially can't wait to talk to Sam, being the Rangers fan that you are. But we wanted to talk about Johnny and Maddie. We wanted to pay our respects to the Gaudreau family. Our hearts go out to the entire family, their friends, the hockey community. And again, we're going to keep those guys in our memories, in our blessings forever, not just now, forever. The hockey community has rallied around. I saw the GoFundMe account for Matthew Gaudreau and his family, over $500,000. Look, money doesn't make things better in this situation, but at least people are showing up and doing what they can, because there's not much you can do. But donating your money, whether it's $1 or $1,000, we love seeing the hockey community rally. So again, a sad way to start the show, a somber tone, but we're going to park that, and we're certainly, it's not the last time we're going to talk about what special guys they were. But that's kind of all we have to say on the topic. And again, we're praying for the Gaudreau family, and we wish them strength, and we wish them well. And it's just all you can say in such a tragic situation.
Yeah. It's tough to transition kind of, out of that, but Sam Rosen is joining us, and we're very happy to welcome Sam on. Obviously a legend of the game, the voice of the New York Rangers. And Sam, I'm sorry to bring you in like that, but we're super honored and humbled that you're here.
No apologies necessary, guys. Thanks for having me on. And that's the biggest story in hockey. I mean, to lose two wonderful guys like Johnny and Matthew, and you still can't get a grasp on it. There's no way, I echo your words, Colby, there's just no way you can express the horror that you feel, the shock. For me, it still grips my stomach to think of what happened, how these guys were killed. And Johnny, you said it, Colby, about Johnny, just a terrific guy, an outstanding hockey player. His college days at BC, I think about his friendships in college and in the NHL, and it's just a guy that never walked around with an attitude that he was a big star. He was, and yet everybody referred to him as Johnny Hockey, because everybody knew the love he had for the game, the passion he had, and how far he had come in his career.
Yeah. And he was a small town kid, and he never changed. He stayed a small town kid. And, I'm with you, Sam. It's hard, especially as a new parent. It's hard to fully grasp it. It is. I've got a 1.5-year-old. I can't, my mind won't allow myself to go there because it's so tragic. It's hard to fathom.
I say to my 23-year-old grandson, he's the oldest of my 4 grandchildren, Brendan, and I say to him every time he leaves my house, every time I see him and he's getting into the car, and I'll always say, "Be careful." And he says, "Be careful's my middle name. You gave it to me." But it's just for things you don't know. And I said, it's not about you. It's about what's around you. And you just worry about them. You just worry about things that can happen. Who could have ever imagined a tragedy like this? Yeah. And, it's one of those things that we should always carry the memory of Johnny and Maddie. And just, as you said before, Colby, just pray for the family, the Gaudreau family, because this is just an overwhelming tragedy.
Yeah.
Well, and sports has this way, Sam, as we start to kind of pivot, because we do want to talk about you and again, Johnny said it, like, this having you on. And I know we've worked together, and I have a good story for you from the first time we worked together that I'm going to talk about today. But the sports community is incredible, the way it rallies. And I've always just realized in these moments, like, wow, like, this is when I feel most lucky to be a part of a community like this. When you see everybody rally. In today's society, we don't agree on anything. But sports has a way of bringing people together and rallying and having each other's backs. And that's what the sports community has done over the past, 4 or 5 days since this happened.
Yeah.
Well, you know it because of being part of a team. And you can't be successful as a team unless you're all working together, leaving everything outside the door. But once you get into that locker room and once you get out on the ice, or whether it's a baseball team out on the field, football team, whatever it is, you've got to do it together to be successful. And that you're 100% correct, Colby, about the fact that the league, the people who are involved in the hockey community always rally together and pull together in support of one another, and they're to be commended on that.
Yeah, and the hockey gods always come back, right? I feel like, in so many ways when things like this do happen, not to say it always creates somewhat of magical moments, right? But you'll feel their presence, I feel like, throughout the season. You will feel the presence of Johnny and Matthew, as the NHL season opens up. I mean, the biggest chill that I got from reading everything, and, I know we're kind of still staying on this topic, but the Columbus Crew fans, the MLS soccer team, at the 13th minute mark of their game, started a Johnny hockey chant throughout the entire arena. And that was like something I just got chills from, and I could see NHL fans doing that. And, I'm sure we'll feel them, my point being, throughout the season. So it's not something that will ever go away. The legacy will continue. And, that's why hockey is the best community, like you both alluded to, because we'll all get through it together, right? It's going to hurt, but we'll continue to honor them the way that they should be honored.
Totally agree.
And to, kind of, I guess, Colby, do you want to start with that story that you wanted to bring up with Sam?
Or? Oh, look, here's Sam. It's funny. Like, I've known you now for a number of years. We've worked together, which, again, I'm going to save my story for the appropriate time in the conversation. It's not like it's nothing. It's just, it's actually, it was just a moment for me where I was like, whoa. But as I started digging into your just history and your background, because look, I didn't grow up in New York, and we didn't have ESPN Plus where I could just choose, I want to listen to Sam today, right? When I really started to learn about you, Sam, and hear you was doing the NFL on Fox, because we always got the Fox channel. I know you started that in 96. So, I'm digging into your background and just looking, and I'm like, he was the captain of his baseball team. He grew up a Yankee. I mean, you grew up a New York sports fan, and you get to call games for these New York teams, and obviously the Rangers forever. Like, that doesn't happen anymore. Guys are transplanted in from all these different cities. So, you were captain of the team at City College of New York, if I read that correctly, as a catcher playing baseball. So your roots are New York through and through. How incredible of a journey for you, right?
Well, it's capital L, capital U, capital C, capital K, luck, and keep flashing that. I mean, I think back to those days when you get a little nostalgic in the off season, and I think about the days when growing up in Brooklyn, we were 11, 12, 13 years old. My friends and I would get on the subway on a Sunday afternoon, and we'd go to Madison Square Garden. The old Madison Square Garden was on 8th Avenue, 49th Street, and 50th Street. And we would stand outside the garden doors, and at 4:30, they'd open the doors, and you'd run up the steps. Yeah. No escalators, no elevators. You run up the steps to the balcony and try to get seats in the side balcony in the first 2 rows, because then you could see the entire ice. Otherwise, if you back up, you miss some of the ice on the near side. Or you go to the end balcony where you see the long view. Mm-hmm. But that was just about every Sunday that we could. We had what we called GO cards, general organization cards. They allowed you to get into the the Garden for 50 cents. And you went to Knick games, you went to Ranger games, you went to college basketball. There was track and field. The Milrose games were indoor. Track was huge. Just sports was such a vital part of my life and so many other people's lives, because it gave you something to focus on. It really gave you something to give your heart and soul to. And the teams at when I'm growing up as a kid, we had the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Giants in baseball, Giants football. The Knicks were there, of course, in basketball, and the Rangers were hockey. And you picked your sports, and there was good separation. You got to go to a lot of games, and it was for me, it was a great upbringing. Couldn't have been better. And then to live the dream, Colby. As a baseball player, I loved baseball. I was captains of my team, the high school team at Stuyvesant High School, the freshman team at City College, the varsity at City College, but not quite good enough to take that final step. So the next best thing, go to the broadcast booth. And I grew up listening on the radio to Mel Allen and Red Barber. Jim Woods was doing the Giants at the time. Marty Glickman was in New York doing basketball and football. It was getting an education on the radio and on television and learning the business and learning what they did and listening to their calls. Mel Allen in baseball was always my favorite. And it's just, that was the way to stay involved in sports, which I loved. And I loved all sports. And when the opportunity came, and I tell this to young people in school today who aspire to be broadcasters, know all sports. Give yourself the ability to go in any direction. You may love basketball, but maybe a football job opens up, and you've got to be able to say yes. Or you love hockey, and a basketball job opens up. For me, I started at Madison Square Garden with MSG Network as a part-timer filling in the mid-'70s doing basketball. I was Marv Albert's backup on basketball on the radio. Then they came and they asked me to do hockey, and I said, sure, I can do hockey. And here I am. I'm still doing hockey.
Yeah. It's actually funny also that you mentioned Marty Glickman, and Colby won't believe me because I don't normally read books, but I was actually just gifted this book last week, The Fastest Kid on the Block, the Marty Glickman story. I'm not sure if you read it or not.
Fascinating story.
Yeah. Very, very interested to start reading that. And again, I joke because I haven't read a book in 5 years, but
I know the 1936 Olympics were all about Jesse Owens, but Marty Glickman went through a real tough time. He was a great runner, great sprinter, and wasn't allowed to run in those 36 Olympics in Berlin.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to get into his story, but also, Colby and I are pretty opposite for this interview. I grew up, Sam, and you were the voice that I heard. I grew up a diehard Rangers fan, and I don't really watch many other sports outside of hockey besides basketball. So I really only know your voice from, the New York Rangers. So for me, it's really cool to have you on here. And, going back to the early parts of your career too, when did you know that hockey became your thing and that you were now a hockey guy? Because it's a power play goal is something that is something that's going to last a lifetime.
Well, it's one of those things. Again, I go back to good luck and good fortune. I was working for United Press International Audio Network. They're now defunct, but they were the rival to AP, Associated Press. On the writing side, they serviced newspapers across the country. On the audio side, they serviced radio stations. So I got to cover all sports through the 70s. I covered the Olympics in Montreal in 76. I covered the Kentucky Derby. I covered Super Bowls, World Series, whatever it was. I was able to cover it as a reporter, interview players, just learned everything about all the sports. And again, the love of hockey was one of the big four sports. So the love of hockey was there. And when ESPN went on the air in 1979, I started off with them doing college football, and then they signed a deal with two NHL teams, the Hartford Whalers. They got a 10-game contract with Hartford and a 10-game contract with the Washington Capitals. And I was able to do the games for them on TV. And then, as I mentioned before, on the radio side, on MSG, I was the backup to Marv Albert with MSG on the Rangers, and then backed up Jim Gordon. And one thing led to another. Now, when did I officially become a hockey guy?
Yeah.
Well, in 1986, MSG Network got the rights to New York Yankees baseball. They had them for a dozen or so years, from 86 into the 90s. And then, George Steinbrenner formed the Yes Network and brought them into his Yankee domain. As far as MSG was concerned, now they had the Yankees, and here I am. I've been doing the Rangers play-by-play for a couple of years, but I went up to Bob Gutkowski, who was the president of the Garden, and offered my services to do baseball. And he said, Sam, I can get good baseball announcers. I can't get good hockey announcers. And I had no response. So I said, thank you for the appreciation of what I'm doing on hockey, and I'm still doing it. So it worked out very well for me in that regard. But as going back to the original premise, you just have to be ready to go in the direction that your career takes you. And I was ready to do that, and lucky enough and fortunate enough to work with some great people, Colby included, and it's just been a wonderful ride for me.
Let me ask you, Sam, because I've heard this from other broadcast play-by-play announcers as well. Do you think hockey is the hardest sport to do? I mean, it's funny because Mike Monaco is a great example, who's now doing everything for ESPN. I was texting with him last night as he's doing a match with Nick Kyrgios at the U.S. Open. 2 weeks ago, he's at the Little League World Series, and he's everywhere. And he has said to me, hockey, which he finally feels like he has a grasp on, he said it's by far the hardest for him to do.
Well, only because, and you know this, Colby and Johnny, you know this, it's because players are changing on the fly. So it's not like in basketball, the clock stops and there's a substitution. Johnny replaces Colby in the lineup for Philly or whatever it is.
I'd be starting. He'd be on the bench.
Right. Baseball, pinch hitting. Football has become more of a from down to down situational substitutions. Hockey, guys are coming in and flying off the bench and going out. You know this, having been a player. So you've got to stay up with who's on the ice. That's, to me, is always the most important thing when you're doing a game, whether it's on radio or whether it's on TV. Let people know who's in the game, because suddenly a goal's going to be scored and people want to, how did he get in the game? So basically that's the greatest difficulty about the game is being ready for those changes, players coming on while the action is going on. Players are always changing. And of course, the influx of European players and some of the great names that we've had, whether they're Russian or Finns or Czechs, you've got to stay up to date on and current on pronunciations of the players' names.
One of my favorites, as of late too, you had Henrik Lundqvist in the booth, I believe, 4 or 5 years ago. And you have him kind of doing the play-by-play, and Zuccarello, I think he makes a comment like, oh, he better not score here. And 2 seconds later, he gets the broadcasting jinx, right? There's a jinx to it. So, I always find it funny too, when you hear players do it for the first time, right? So, that was Hank's introduction to, what is now a broadcasting career for him. But with that as well, how much have you learned now from working with the former players? I mean, you had JD for so many years and Joe, obviously. has your knowledge of the game, and does it
Don't forget
still?
Esposito. Don't forget
Yeah,
Esposito. That's a
I'm
pretty
thinking
good
my
one
lifetime.
too.
I'm thinking when since I've been watching, but yeah, that's my fault. I don't mean to leave anyone out, but in the game today, you're going on 40 years. Like, are you still learning things about the game of hockey, or do you now just know all the X's and O's and stuff like that?
No, very much so, Johnny. The one thing that I pride myself on, and it stems really from John Davidson, because to me, he always set the standard of hockey announcers and preparation for a game. And Joe and I do that. Joe followed John and has done it. Joe is as good as it gets in knowledge of the game and talking to players and talking to coaches. To me, it's invaluable to be able to talk to the opposing coach. We get access to the Rangers coaches, obviously, and down through the years, whether it's been head coaches or assistant coaches, you try to talk to them to get an idea of what, how the game is being played. It's hard to, it's not like football where you have a week to prepare and you're looking at video. In the playoffs, you have that chance because you're playing the same team, a best of 7 series. But during the season, you're playing back-to-back nights. You're playing 3 games in 4 nights. It's hard to formulate a game plan, but they do it. They figure it out, and you want to get an idea of how they approach a game differently from the game before. One night you're playing Edmonton, the next night you're playing Vancouver, and then you fly home and you're playing the Philadelphia Flyers. So the game changes. The game has changed in the way it's been played. In the 90s, we had a lot of clutching and grabbing and interfering, and it slowed down the game. And then after the lockout, the game opened up, and we had the ability of the European influence coming in. The speed of the game picked up. The speed of hockey has never been better. The skills of the players has never been better. It just keeps improving all the time. And you want to know about how coaches are incorporating that speed and those skills into the game. And you always talk to coaches, assistant coaches that who were former players, and then current head coaches. It's just, it's always learning about staying up to date on what's going on in the game. And then the players that play, and Colby mentioned it before, players moving around the league. But you familiarize yourself, you become friends with players, you know them, and you try to see them before a game, at a morning skate, whatever it is, to get some information about not only the player, but how the team is playing the game as well.
Well, I bet it wasn't there wasn't a lack of information you were able to get when your old partner came back to be president of the New York Rangers a number of years ago. You might have been, making hockey decisions at that point, Sam, a little bit, but it's Johnny, listening to him talk about this stuff, and I think, because I remember Sam and I have done, I think, about 5 games together on the radio for Westwood One over a couple of years, playoff games, and the first one I ever did with him was in Toronto. It was a playoff game, a game 6 against the Boston Bruins. And, I was pretty nervous because I hadn't done a lot of games to that point. I was very new at the radio. They're like, you're going to work with Sam Rosen. You don't know what you're going to, you just don't. I've worked with guys who are legends, who are the best. I've worked with guys who are legends, who are jerks, right? Like, there's both. And so I don't really know what I'm getting here. And I'm a little bit nervous. Well, within meeting Sam for 5 minutes, luckily, like, for the most part, nerves settled. But before the game, Johnny, we sat in the booth and we talked about, basically just hockey 101 type of stuff, because, we were just kind of wanting to get to know each other. How do we see the game, this and that? And in the open of the show, and I'll never forget this moment, Sam, the minute, look, we're talking right now, we can hear you, all this stuff, but when you have a headset on and it's the only thing you can hear, everything else is kind of blocked out, the sound is sometimes booming and it's bigger, and you've got, all the amplifications on the radios and this and that. And when you introduced us in the open of that game, like, I almost froze for a second because it was weird. All of a sudden, this guy who I've now known for a few hours, but I've seen on TV, starting with the NFL to the NHL, Hockey Hall of Famer, coming through my headphones. And I just kind of got caught in the moment a little bit, Sam, because you have this very unique sound. Like, no one else sounds like you. You are one. Now, there's a lot of new broadcasters that are really good and really talented, but they all sound really similar. They don't have these unique sounds that you have. And there's a couple other guys I think that have been around for a long time, so unique, right? And there was just this moment of like, whoa, like, this guy's coming through my headset. I better say something here, right? And I remember it really well, Sam. And the last thing I'll say about the story was, we finished the game. We go our separate way. We grab a bite to eat. But that night we go our separate ways. The next day you sent me a really nice text message and just encouraged me to keep going, keep getting reps, keep doing games. You said you've got a future in this if you want it. And that stuck with me forever, Sam. And I still remember it. That's why I'm bringing it up, because, again, like, the legends, like, whether it's Sakic or Foot or you, like, those are usually the guys that are the best. It's when they do things. Mark Recchi, I'll throw him in there too, a guy I played with. Like, the smallest thing you say has such a big impact on people because they'll never forget it. And I'm sure there's 1,000 other people, Sam, that have a similar story to mine. But I got to tell you, man, that was a cool moment for me in my broadcast journey to do that game. And then, we got to do a bunch more after that.
Well, I always look at two things. Number one, if you're hired to do the job, then somebody believes that you're capable of doing the job and doing it well, because you're on the air, you're being paid for it, you're a professional. This is part of your career, but you're also an expert. And I've done this down through the years, and I believe this. The game is not about me. It's not even about us, but you're the expert. You were on the ice. You played the game. I didn't play the game. I've been around the game. I've watched thousands and thousands of games, but I haven't been on the ice feeling somebody hitting me while I'm trying to score a goal or trying to prevent a goal or making a save in the net. So I defer to those people who know it, who felt it, who felt the pressure of a playoff game or a college tournament game or a championship game or whatever level they played at. They felt that, and I always deferred to them. I never try to impose mine. I'll go with facts, but I won't go with the emotion and that feeling of what it's like to score, or what it's like to get slammed into the boards, or what it's like to stop a breakaway or a penalty shot. That you defer to the player and the expert, and no matter what level you played at, if you're in that broadcast booth, you're the expert, and I'll always try to appreciate that person next to me and make sure that they get their chance to express what's going on and explain what's going on the ice.
I was hesitant to do this, Sam, but because you said that, I always try to come up with a question that our guest has never been asked before. And I'm sure you've always been asked about what your most legendary call would be. I'm sure you get that a lot, right? That's got to be a common one.
Yes.
But because you talk about knowing what it's like to be in a moment and to, have that feeling, that emotion, there have been times where, because of the national broadcast, you're not on the call for a big Ranger moment. And maybe sometimes you're doing the radio, but there are some calls that I think of that are now associated with a Doc Emmerich or a Kenny Albert when they're doing national calls. Moments that I think about are Marty St. Louis against Montreal in overtime, or Derek Stepan in overtime. Is there a moment in Ranger history that you weren't on the call for that you wish you had a chance to be on the call for?
That's a really tough question. Probably I'd have to say those calls that you just mentioned game-winning goals, overtime goals in the playoffs, the height of the most tense moments that you feel in sports. I would have to say it would be those. I can't single out one. So it's so hard. You do so many of them. But I would say any time that I'm not on the call and it's a Rangers playoff game, even during the regular season, it bugs the heck out of me. Oh, I grit my teeth. I'll yell. I'll scream. If a guy misses a play, I'll be yelling at the TV. And it's really hard to not be involved. Fortunately, the last few years, part of my deal has been when the Rangers are done TV-wise on MSG Network after the first round, I'll get to do any radio games where Kenny Albert has a conflict and has to go do TV. Then I step in and do the radio. So selfishly, I'm hoping the Rangers have this tremendous run in the playoffs this year and get to the Stanley Cup final, because TNT has the final this year and Kenny would be doing the game and I'll do the radio.
Right.
That was the biggest concern with your announcement, was how the hell can we get Sam to do the games if they get past the first round?
Well, it's a beautiful partnership, I think, that you and Kenny have had. And I've got to know Kenny really well. I've done, games with him too. And he just speaks the world of you, Sam. And you don't always see that. You sometimes see sort of a competition and this and that, but the partnership, I feel like, with you two sliding in and sliding out. I mean, Ranger fans are spoiled. Like, they really are. Like, you guys have it so good with these guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, you also mentioned the guys that I've worked with. How lucky is it for me? Yeah. Basically, over a 40-year career, I've had 3 partners.
Unbelievable.
Phil Esposito for 2 years, John Davidson for 20, and Joe Micheletti and I are going into our 19th year together. Wow. So it's been a great ride. You mentioned Kenny. Kenny works next door to us with Dave Maloney. Dave's always pounding on the wall when the referee makes a call he doesn't like. But the thing about Kenny that everyone should appreciate is how hard he's worked to establish an identity of his own, and a great identity. Yeah. One of the great announcers who can do any sport. He was doing water polo from the studio in Stamford, Connecticut in the Olympics. I mean, so my appreciation for Kenny is how hard he's worked, and he worked in the minor leagues, in the American Hockey League. Barry Trotz was his roommate, for God's sake.
In Baltimore, right?
He loves that story, the Baker Rest story.
So Kenny has worked his way up and deserves all the credit in the world for establishing himself as one of the great announcers of our time. So that's the great appreciation I have when I see someone that's worked as hard as he has and is as good as he is. And again, I go back to my feeling about people being versatile, and Kenny is as versatile as it gets. So I have great admiration for him and a great appreciation for what he's done in his career, and still has a lot more to do. But I'm rooting for the Rangers to make the run to the final so Kenny can get it on TV and I can be alongside him in the booth next to him.
Well, speaking to that a bit too, I mean, anyone who listened to your radio calls with Dave this past postseason, you guys couldn't hide the emotion in your voice with how exciting this postseason run was. And, again, I think everyone surrounding the Rangers this year had that team of destiny vibe around it, right? Like the beginning of the playoffs, it just seemed like nobody was going to get in their way. And, I kind of wanted to ask you, and again, like maybe it's tough to have you pick one, but it's almost like, have you ever fallen more in love with a team aside from 94, because that's a team that got it done, than this past year? Because it really felt like, in my 28 years of living, that this was the one that was going to do it and was destined to do it. I mean, I can't think of another year that felt more magical than this one.
I'll go back a little bit. The 92 team, Mark Messier had joined the team. Mike Gartner was on the team. That team won the President's Trophy. I thought that team had everything going for them. And then I still shake my head over the 4-game suspension to Adam Graves for slashing Mario Lemieux. He got him on the hands. Maybe it could have been a 1-game suspension. Turned out to be 4. Series turned around. Ron Francis scores from center ice, and things go south, and the Rangers get knocked out in the second round. That team I really thought was going to do it. The next year, 93, they fall off at the end of the season, don't make the playoffs. And then 94, they come back with Mike Keenan as the head coach and this great sense of purpose. And even though a lot of the team changed late in 94, they brought in players that had championship pedigree and championship desire, and fortunately went all the way. But those teams, that 92 team was a special team as well. But the team in 2012, I thought was a very good team. The Devils knocked them off in 6. Again, the team that went to the final against the LA Kings, it's a 5-game series. 4 of those games are overtime and double overtime. Yeah. And I still believe the referee made the wrong call in game 2.
Goalie interference.
They're up in the third period. Yeah. They don't call the interference with the goaltender. LA comes back, wins game 2. Rangers come home down 2-0 instead of 1-1. And I think if it had been 1-1, who knows? It could have changed everything. But the Rangers had one clunker of a game. That was game 3 in that series. But 4 of those 5 games, boy, they were great, great games. And that was another very good Rangers team. This team, I think, got beaten by a Florida team that came with motivation from day one. They lost in the final the year before. They came with the motivation, and they finally adapted to Paul Maurice's system. We went into Florida in the middle of the year the previous year, and Paul Maurice says to Joe and I, "Boy, I hate this team. Hate this team. They don't listen. They don't follow anything. I hate this team." We go into Florida in late March. Joe and I go to see Paul Maurice. Paul says, "Oh, I love this team. We worked so hard." So now that team goes to the final, loses in the final, but next year they are in the core of the team is kept together. They come with a sense of purpose and motivation. They know what it takes, how hard it is to go all the way, and they go all the way. And I'm hoping that the Rangers will use the loss to Florida in the conference final as motivation to take that final step. The core of the team is still together. They have the great goaltender. They have some great young players that are still up and coming. And this team, I'm sure there'll be some tweaks along the way and some trading deadline deals, but this team has the team that can compete and possibly go a long way.
Yeah. And I think, one thing I always look at with general managers is like, are they learning from their mistakes? And I think Drury has learned, about trade deadlines. One year he went one way and it had a lot of success. The next year he went sort of big game hunting and it didn't work out. And so I think he's kind of been able to learn some things on the fly like any of us would in any position. And I think he's pretty poised to make some of the right decisions this year around this roster. And look, Sam, I want you to have everything you want in life. And I want to say this because I don't know, like a lot of the people, look, we have a big Rangers following on our show, Sam, because of Johnny. And normally we do this show live every morning, 9 to 10 a.m. Once the season starts in October, we'll be back live, right? But I just want to say this to people who aren't totally familiar. This is going to be Sam's last year. He's the longest tenured broadcaster in the National Hockey League, recently announced that this will be his last season, doing full-time play-by-play for the New York Rangers. And what I'm happy about, Sam, for you is that this announcement came and people are going to get to celebrate you all year. And I know you don't want to make it about you. That's not the kind of guy that you are, but I've walked around a press box with you before. I mean, it's like walking around with Elvis Presley, I'm sure, back in his day. Like, seriously, everybody can't wait to come up and say hello to you. How are you? Whatever. Look, Jack Edwards, who I know people have different opinions on. I like Jack. He's been nothing but nice to me. I respect him. And again, I know he was a home flavor guy, but I still have a lot of respect for Jack Edwards. And it makes me a little bit sad that he didn't get to like have that sort of final year where people could truly celebrate everything he's meant to that team and that organization. And I'm just happy that that's going to, the fans, it's all about the fans.
Very much so.
Your voice is Johnny's entire life.
Yeah, I'm going to need you to record my answering machine for me after this.
So I'm happy that for the Rangers fans, and we have a lot of them that listen to the show, that they're going to get that sort of, closure with this last season with you, and people are going to be able, every building is gonna, I mean, again, like I've been in press boxes with you in New York, at the Islanders building, the Toronto building. We've been in the studio together in Stamford. Like I've been in different places with you. I know how people look at you, Sam. And so I am happy at the timing of it all. And honestly, just I get to tell people, hey, I got to do games with Sam Rosen. I mean, that's something I like to tell people because it's so meaningful.
I never had any tight-fitting Elvis Presley suits, though.
No.
No. Thank you for those words, Colby. And again, it goes to how lucky I've been, how fortunate I've been to be with part of one of the greatest sports organizations there is, and then to be able to go to all these wonderful cities and wonderful franchises and meet the great people in sports and in hockey. And it's been a great privilege and a great time of my life. It's been my life, and the timing is right about now. I've done this for a long time, and it's been a wonderful time, and I can't ask for anything more. And I think everybody felt this was the right time to do this, that the right time to go out. I'm still enjoying what I do. The fans are enjoying what I do, and I want to finish up on a high note.
Yeah.
Well, your family's finally going to get to meet you and spend a little bit of time with you.
Yeah, I've missed a few birthdays and holiday experiences. I will.
You got the bar mitzvah this year, though. You went to the bar mitzvah. Or the
I did. My granddaughter was bar mitzvah, but I did take a day off from the playoffs. You got the close family ties have to be observed, and I couldn't miss that one.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. I only have a couple more questions for you. We're seriously so appreciative of your time, but like Colby said 10 times on the show so far, I got to ask my Ranger questions, and I'd get yelled at if I don't. So I got a couple more Ranger related ones for you, but this one I'm so curious to hear your response, because in your long career, have you ever seen anything like the way that Matt Rempe was received this year? I mean, we've talked about it like on this show, almost to a point where it's comical, but I've seriously never seen or felt anything like it in my life.
It was amazing. I think unique can aptly describe Matt Rempe. 6th round draft pick, 6'7", 230, 235. But I'll say this about Matt Rempe. He's got a chance to be a player in this league because he wants to. He doesn't want to be just a figurehead. And we're past the years, as everyone knows, where you can just fight. Mm-hmm. It doesn't benefit the Rangers or Peter Laviolette as head coach to have Matt Rempe on dressed for 4 minutes of playing time. If he can give you 10 minutes of playing time and physical play and go in front of the net, he becomes a player and a valuable commodity. And I'll tell you this: I talked to Mike Barnett about a week ago. Mike Barnett, who used to be Wayne Gretzky's agent and has been an advisor to Chris Drury for several years, and prior to that to Glenn Sather. And Mike knows Matt Rempe. They've had long talks about what he can do in his career, and he feels that Matt Rempe can be a valuable player because of his size to go in front of the net, to go into the corners and battle. He's going to come out with pucks. He's going to win pucks in the corner. He's going to go in front, and who can move him? 6'7", 235, who's going to be able to move him if he can screen the goaltender? He stayed in the Connecticut area, worked out with Chris Kreider and Chris's physical trainer. This guy
Ben Prentice
wants to be a player. He's 21 years old, and he really has a good attitude. It's not just, hey, I made it to the league, I want to help the team. And he'll get a chance to be a regular on the team.
Yeah, and the fans, I mean.
But I agree with you, Johnny. The fans took to him right away. Again, seeing that big body, because at that, we've seen players in the past, big, strong, lumbering, awkward. He's not awkward. He's athletic. He skates well enough to play forward. And as I said before, he has the desire to be a good player in the league and to be a regular in the league.
One of my favorite moments of the season, and it wasn't even in a game. It was, right after Rempe. I mean, he's gotten to 10 fights in the first 10 games, but he's taking warm up. He's stretching on the red line, and you see his face pop up on the Jumbotron during warm up, like Matt Rempe stats. And he's got 2 black eyes, a bruised nose, and he sees himself on the Jumbotron and just starts laughing. Like, you could just tell that kid was just having the time of his life, and that was the coolest part of it, I think.
Well, he appreciated being in the NHL, and he knows what it means, and his family knows what it means. His mom knows what it means. He started his career in the outdoor game against the Islanders, dropped the puck, and he's fighting with Matt Martin. Then we go into Philadelphia, and he's got another fight there. Then we go into Columbus, and he's challenged there. So, obviously, he was a target. The hit that he put on Siegenthaler in New Jersey, borderline play, high-speed play, but the refs are watching him closely at the time, and they watched him closely in virtually every game he played. So he's got to be careful.
Yeah.
I mean, people will be watching to make sure he plays the game clean and plays the game the right way. And that's what the coaches want, as I said before, so that they can use him 10 minutes a game and not 4 minutes a game.
Yeah. That's the key. I said that in the playoffs, that if he can't give you between 8 and 12 minutes, it's hard to have him out there for, 2 or 3 shifts, because it wears the rest of your lineup down. I'm rooting for this guy, by the way, as a not, I don't have an affiliation to the Rangers, but I hope that from what I heard, he put massive work in with Ben Prentice this summer. Kreider is a physical specimen. I mean, he's a freak. We know that. I mean, he is as a good
role model.
100%.
Good role model.
Oh, he's a great role model, So it'll be interesting, Johnny, to see how that plays out with him this year.
Yeah, and I only got one more. Colby, I don't know if you have another thing to bring up too.
No, go ahead. You can finish. You can. I know how excited you were to get Sam. I was too.
Yeah.
So I'll let you close out the interview here.
Been trying to hold my composure this whole time, and believe it or not, for the Colby haters out there, when I introduced myself to Sam for the first time and said that I do a show with Colby Cohen, his face did light up with a big smile.
There you go.
So that is something that Colby can hang his hat on. But Sam, I got to ask you this, because you've called so many, I feel like, emotional games too, like, Gretzky's last game, Messier's last game, even, post 9/11 stuff, it's retirement ceremonies. I mean, there has been a countless number of emotional games, emotional nights. And, I feel like sometimes we get lost that broadcasters are also human beings, and it could be tough for them to get through a game emotionally. Is there, one night that maybe stands out to you the most? And I'll even throw one back. Eddie Giacomin's return to the Garden, right? Like, I think you called that game as well.
No, that
No,
was
oh, you
I
didn't call
was
that game.
there as a fan in the crowd. I
Oh,
didn't
wow.
didn't call that game. That was a little before me, but
Okay.
that
Sorry to
was
age you there.
I was in the bullpen ready, but I didn't
Uh-huh.
get the call for that game. But yeah, no, that boy, I just think of the games that you mentioned, doing Mark Messier's scoring his 500th goal at the Garden. Wayne Gretzky's last game, that was a very emotional one because I was working downstairs. That was a national TV game, and I'm working the sidelines and doing interviews and watching what's going on. And then I think the moment that was so striking was seeing Wayne in the locker room by himself, and saying, "Oh my God, it's over. This great career." Because I personally feel he's the greatest player of all time. With all due respect to Gordie Howe, who Wayne loved and admired, to me, Wayne Gretzky was the best of all time. And watching him play 3 seasons in New York, I mean, that was a joy. I got to sit next to him on the plane, and he'd get nervous. He was a tough flyer. When he got nervous, he went into the cockpit and sat with the pilots.
No
That's how
way.
we would get through flights. But it was great to get to know him and to get to understand what made him the great player that he was. And Colby touched upon it with other players, and when we were talking about Johnny Gaudreau, just he didn't carry himself as this idol of superstars. He was very humble. He was so close to his dad, and his dad meant so much to him, and was the epitome of what you wanted a sports star to be. And Wayne was he just welcomed you in, and it was great to get to know a player like that. So that would probably be one of the most emotional games that I was around. And then, of course, again, all these, it's so hard to pick out these single games, but when you see something special, Guy Lafleur coming back to the Rangers, he was past his prime, yes, but you could see those moments where he'd flash down the right wing, and you'd say, "Now that was something special." Even the end of Bobby Orr's career, that was you knew what a great player he was, how he changed the game. And then I'll go back. It's not a Ranger moment, but this was a special moment. I was there when Ray Bork was able to hoist the Stanley Cup in Colorado. I mean, that was a moment, one of the great moments in NHL history. Here was a guy who still is in Boston. He's back in Boston. He is Boston. And yet he changed his entire life to chase that dream of winning a Stanley Cup, and he got it. And to see Joe Sakic hand him the Stanley Cup, that was unbelievable.
Still one of my favorite calls of all time, and I'm sure you've noticed, but I think Colby's having a technical difficulty right now. He got booted from this, but I think he'll be back in a second here. So just, I guess, hang tight if you can
I will.
for Colby to get back in. But I guess while I have you here, since you announced that you are retiring, what has the feedback been like for you now that it's been like a month or so? I'm sure it's been overwhelming.
It's been really tremendous to get. I got a text the other day from one of my first statisticians when I was working at Madison Square Garden. The feedback has been wonderful. People have sent me great texts. I got a call from John Sterling. Michael Kay of the Yankees sent me a great text. It's just been wonderful to get terrific responses. People that were my bosses in the past, people that I've worked with at various levels. Even going back to the football days, Phil McConkey, the former Giant, who I worked with on Giants preseason football, sent me great notes. So a lot of terrific people have reached out, and it's just been wonderful. It's what I appreciate the most is the realization that I was able to touch people's lives in a way, and the great feeling that I get when I'll leave the garden and people will stop on the street. They'll ask for a selfie, they'll ask for an autograph, they'll ask for a picture. The greatest feeling is to have someone say, my dad had season tickets, I've got season tickets, and now my 10-year-old son is a big fan. And, it doesn't get any better than that when it's handed down from generation to generation.
Yeah, and Colby's back now.
Yeah, sorry, my internet dropped out, and so I didn't hear some of that, Sam. But I can't thank you enough for doing this. It's going to be fun watching Rangers games this year, and going to have to cherish them a little bit more. And I will say, like, I look forward to, in a way, and I'm sure it's going to be bittersweet for you, but I look forward to seeing the reception at the Garden on your final evening in that spot, because I think that it's going to be, as big a reception as any of the superstar legends that have gone through that place, because that's what you mean to that community, that city, that franchise. So we love you. Thanks for coming on today and giving us your time.
Thank you so much.
You're the best, man. You really are.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. I could talk hockey all day long. So if you have nothing to do later on, you want to talk some more, I'll be around.
All right, you're the best, Sam.
Thanks. And the love you expressed from to me goes right back to you and to all the fans, because they've been so good to me throughout my career, and I love them all.
Yeah, Sam, we love you. Seriously.
Thank you.
Like, Rangers fans are the way they talk about you. If you could only see everything, I wish you could see everything the Ranger fans have to say about you, because it truly
Thank you.
It's something that's incredible. But thank you for your time. I'll see you in a couple of weeks at training camp. So I might have to give you a big hug, but
that'll be fine.
See you soon. All right. I feel weird saying love you, but I love you, Sam. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Have a great rest of your week. All right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Talk to you soon. I had to say it.
All right. Hey, listen, I'm not going to give you a hard time, because I
held my composure pretty well.
Listen, I feel the love for Sam as well. And I've mentioned on this show before about some of the play-by-play guys that I've worked with, and I've worked with other Hockey Hall of Fame broadcasters, and I got to tell you, they weren't half the human being Sam Rosen is. Like, he just, he's such an awesome human being. And then he's obviously very good at what he does, but, just could probably sit there and talk with him for like 5 hours, like listening to him get into the stories, and just the passion that he has. Look, you don't see local people work in their local market anymore. So, like, you have to become a fan of that team, or you have to manufacture fake energy or fake enthusiasm. But this is a guy who grew up in Brooklyn. Like, he lived a true dream of his, not just to be an NHL or a pro play-by-play guy, but for the team he grew up going to games with his folks on the weekends, and his siblings and his friends. So, I hope that the Rangers fans like this. And I hope that, they enjoy the interview and enjoy him this year, because, again, you're going to have someone great come in right behind him, but it's never going to be the same. It's just never going to be the same. That's just how it goes.
Yeah. And Colby, thank you again for bringing Sam on. Like, I tried to hide it as much as I could. That was so cool for me to talk to him. And honestly, when you got kicked out of the stream, I was pretty happy to have him one-on-one. I'm not going to lie. That's something I was pretty pumped about. But before we get into some more NHL news, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Out West. For a limited time, when you purchase any 3 of our premium polos, you'll get a 4th item of your choice from our entire site for free. Whether you're looking to upgrade your wardrobe with high-quality modern activewear or stock up on essentials for your winter golf trip, now's the perfect time to shop and grab a free one on us. So visit OutWestGolf.com today to take advantage of this exclusive offer. Out West, every game needs an outlaw. And again, our code is Cuppa, CUPPA, for 15% off. That's in all caps, CUPPA. But the biggest news right now, Kobe, that just happened right before we started recording was Leon Draisaitl signing a 8 by $14 million extension with the Edmonton Oilers. I am pretty bummed about it because I feel like it takes away from a huge talking point that could have been, continued throughout the season. But very pumped for Oilers fans and for Draisaitl, obviously, to now be the most highly paid player in the NHL and to see him stick around in Edmonton for
Well,
what feels
average,
like
highest paid
is now unfinished
AAV.
business.
Highest paid
AAV,
AAV.
AAV.
Ovechkin's contract had
Yes.
$124 million in total dollars.
Good correction. But it feels like Edmonton has unfinished business. And now, if you're Connor McDavid, we talk about him possibly leaving in a couple of years. But if Draisaitl's signing there and getting paid like that, it seems hard to believe that McDavid won't do the same in a couple of years down the road.
100%. I'm sure the minute that he gets to the last year of his contract, he'll get that. The question that I now have for you is, and I'm just looking off to the side at my notes, you'll have Draisaitl at $14 million.
Mm-hmm.
You have McDavid right now at 12.5, right? Bouchard is going to go from 3.9 to about $10 million. And Darnell Nurse has a lot of years left at 9.25. That's an expensive core four right there. But I'd say that the difference, though, is it's split. You've got half on the front end and half on the back end. So at least it's divvied up a little bit. But you got to think now McDavid goes to, by the time
16.
I think 16, because by the time we get to the McDavid deal, the cap is up another $4 million a season. So you're probably up to close to 10 million more than it is now by the time McDavid's deal comes true. So yeah, I think he ends up at 16. I'm happy Draisaitl just set that standard though, because again, you're helping other guys get paid when you take top dollar. Like when you take team-friendly deals, it hurts other players. It does. It hurts, other players negotiating who are top players. And when you don't want to lose the middle class of the NHL. Like you don't want to have all $15 million and then $900,000. Like you do want to make sure you preserve the middle class of the NHL. But at the end of the day, like it's good when big contracts are being handed out, man. It means the league is healthy. It means there's money to go around.
Yeah. Also, something that I think is important too is just like it seems to, I don't want to say like there's no loyalty in the league right now, but it just kind of reassures that some guys do have that. We spent a lot of time on this show talking about the prospects that use their leverage to get out of a situation, but knowing that a guy like Draisaitl probably could have gone to, maybe 28 other teams and gotten paid this amount of money, but chose to stay with a team that he's been on for years and get paid that amount of money and try to get it done in Edmonton. Like I like seeing that. I'm all for the drama and the trades and the free agency and seeing guys move places, but I also do want to see, a superstar stay where they were drafted and win for a fan base as loyal and passionate as Edmonton. I mean, we saw them throughout these past playoffs, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with Draisaitl wanting to stay. How could you not give, or how could you not, trying to find the word here, like how could you not respect what you saw from the Edmonton Oilers fans this past postseason and want to win for them, right?
Well, and look, good for Stan Bowman. He got this deal done. He locks up Draisaitl. It was important to do that. And we'll see what happens. Like if I put a gun to your head right now and asked you how many cups McDavid and Draisaitl will win in Edmonton, what's your number?
I would not go higher than 2.
Okay, but you do believe
2 would be my number.
So you think they'll get 2?
I think believe 2. I believe they could get 2 by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I think that's the number. I think you need bounces, you need luck, but like I think 2's the number. I think Edmonton is going to write these 8-year contracts, and I think you're going to get 2 Stanley Cups out of them, which any team, any franchise, any GM, they'd all take that. Any owner.
The only thing that I'm curious about too would be because of them, well, not McDavid yet, but because of them being locked up long term, does that help the attraction for free agents? Like, would you think a free agent would take less? No, but do you think
Listen,
a free agent would take less money? A free agent that hasn't won would take less money to go play in Edmonton just to try to win with McDavid and Draisaitl? Like, that's obvious.
100% at this point. I think the stigma on Edmonton is gone. I think players are now willing and actually want to go to Edmonton. So I think we'll keep an eye on how that transpires over the next 3 years. I think we'll really find out. But I think you started to see it this year with Skinner and with some other guys who had up plenty of options and chose Edmonton. So look, I was talking to a friend the other day who's unsigned, who when he had his big free agent contract, didn't want to go to Edmonton 7 years ago, whatever, 6-7 years ago. Now go to Edmonton in a heartbeat. So I think there's a number of guys unsigned that feel that way, Johnny. So big news out of Edmonton. I know the Oilers Nation guys have been all over it. Again, we're recording this episode on September 3rd. We'll release it tomorrow, September 4th, just to give you a little bit of context there. Couple of other little news and nuggets, Johnny. Torrey Krug out for the season, ankle surgery. It doesn't seem like the Torrey Krug St. Louis Blues marriage has ever really worked as I thought everybody hoped. And that sort of was the nail in the coffin for Pietrangelo leaving. And he wins a cup in Vegas.
Well, they were trying to trade him last summer, weren't they?
To Philly, and he blocked it.
Yeah.
I played with Torrey.
Yeah.
His first year pro, we were D partners in the American League. I mean, what a competitor. Oh, really? I mean, the kid is a talent, and he's a competitive guy, and he's a mean little bastard the way he plays. I wish him well, but it just hasn't worked out all that well in St. Louis for him.
Yeah, I'm looking up his contract right now to see how much he has left. He's got another 3 seasons to go here at 6.5. So I wonder what they can do with that. Obviously, this year is now a wash, so he'll have 2 years left when he actually can play. But he'll obviously be on LTIR for this season, right? So that frees up that 6.5.
Yeah, and look, the cap's going to keep going up. So that 6.5 is going to keep becoming less and less significant as it moves along. So other news, Jeremy Swayman skating, captain's practice. I wouldn't read into that because, he wants to be a Bruin and the Bruins want him to be a Bruin. There's no way this doesn't end up with him being a Bruin. It might take some time. There may be some.
Have you seen comments on it? I haven't seen the fan reaction on it because I know it happened
him being
right
a
before.
captain practice.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I don't. I'm not really looking at that kind of thing. So, look, Brad Marchand did this. He skated all captain's practices, and then training camp started. He wasn't there. I think that's a player who's saying, guys, I'm acting in good faith and I want to be here. Let's get this done. I think that promotes good vibes around the situation for the player. And look, hopefully this deal gets done. I don't think he gets signed before camp, though. My gut tells me day one of training camp, no, there will be no Jeremy Swayman. That's what my gut tells me.
All right. I'm going with you on this one. I think so too. I mean, if it hasn't gotten done yet, I would imagine training camp would be the time to get it done, right? Or because he's in the area now, maybe.
I mean, here's what I'll say. People don't like to do things until there's a deadline. And I'd say the first deadline.
I've never had a contract negotiation. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, look, these guys, they find a way sometimes in the 11th hour when there's a deadline, right? But it took them 11 months to get there. And then all of a sudden it's like, shit, we got to do this. So it could still happen, but I just don't think they're looking at training camp as the deadline. I just don't. I think, you're looking at opening night, you want to get it done before that, but because you want to get off to a good start. We'll see. I think this drags like a week into camp, and then hopefully we'll get done. I hope the player gets paid. I've said that. I've said $10 million is not the ask. I stand by that. But we'll see what happens. It's a story that's not going away. I mean, we're going to start doing our shows live October 1, and that's going to be something we probably talk about on October 1 because it's probably not going to be done on October 1. We'll see. So it's not going away.
And let me ask you a question. Your Wi-Fi is so fucking bad. But I kind of want to ask you about one other topic if you're willing to explain and fight through this Wi-Fi situation right now. But news over the weekend: the Carolina Hurricanes signed Seth Jarvis to an 8-year, $63.2 million contract. But Frank Saravelli, friend of the show, said it's a fascinating deal because it has a chance to be a precedent setter league-wide with a lower cap hit because of deferred money. And it was the first time that I've really seen this deferred money contract term. Can you explain what that really means? Like, you're familiar with it? I've never really seen this before.
Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a payment that comes after the contract is done, really, after the years of service. So like he'll
Why don't more players do that then?
Well, because why would you do that? Because $8 today are better than dollars tomorrow. Okay. So it's you're doing the team a favor, and I just don't think many players are willing to do that, right? Like, dollars in your pocket today are more valuable than dollars in your pocket tomorrow, right? In the 8th year, 9th year of this contract, like, that dollar amount is worth less than it would be in the first year of this contract. Okay. There's all sorts of different factors. There's inflation. There's not being able to invest the money. The team is hanging on to the money instead of the player. Like, dollar now is always better than dollar later. That's just a fact in life, Johnny. So I just don't think players are really willing to do this. I don't. And
it's like more of a security thing. Yeah.
Shohei Ohtani did it. No, it's for the team, man. It's so the team can lower the cap hit and use that extra $400,000 or $500,000. So, look, my Wi-Fi sucks. This was a great show.
Let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up here and call it a day. I'm sorry to everyone. I'm using my cell phone Wi-Fi here, and it's not great, clearly. So, good show. Awesome talking to Sam Rosen. What a legend. I hope people enjoy.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravelli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.